The massive council chamber glowed with soft blue light, as hundreds of alien representatives sat in tiered seats that circled the central speaking platform. Everyone watched as Jiho Kim walked toward the center, his steps echoing in the sudden. Quiet humans had been part of the Galactic Council for 20 years, but today would be different. Jiho wore the simple black uniform of Earth Command, with only a small silver pin showing the joined hands of human and alien species, a symbol that now felt like a lie. He carried a small datapad, nothing else. No weapons, no ceremonial items. The aliens had never allowed humans to bring their traditions into this sacred space. The council chamber held representatives from over 300 species. Some looked almost human, while others resembled nothing Earth had ever seen. Some floated in special tanks filled with their home atmospheres. Others required translation devices, since they communicated through colors or smells, instead of sounds. Council meetings always started with arguing, and today was no different. To his right sat the powerful Morcanti delegates with their purple skin and forearms. They controlled most trade routes in the galaxy, and never let humans forget it. To his left were the insectoid Viridians who had fought 3 wars before joining the council. Their representatives clicked their mandibles in what Jiho recognized as amusement. They always found humans entertaining, like pets that could speak. Songmi Park stood near the exit, watching carefully. She had been Jiho's deputy for 5 years, and knew exactly what would happen today. Her hand rested on her own datapad, which contained the documents they would need after this meeting ended. High Counselor Ziv, a tall, thin alien with silver skin and eyes that reflected light like mirrors, raised his hand for silence. The chamber quieted immediately. He gestured toward Jiho. Ambassador Kim, you have requested an emergency session. Explain yourself. Jiho nodded and pressed a button on his datapad. A large hologram appeared above the chamber, showing Earth and its colonies in blue and council territories in red. The image slowly rotated, showing the relatively small human territory compared to the vast council space. For 20 years, humanity has been part of this council. Jiho began, his voice strong and clear. We joined with hope for cooperation, advancement, and mutual protection. We brought innovations in medicine that saved billions of lives across 17 species. We developed faster engines that cut travel time between systems in half. We offered our military to defend council borders against pirates and raiders. The blue dots on the hologram pulsed as he listed each contribution humans had made. Songmi watched as several council members shifted uncomfortably. Yet in return, we have faced constant restrictions. Jiho continued. Our request for expansion have been denied. 15 times our scientists are required to share all discoveries. While council species keep their breakthroughs secret, our citizens face discrimination on council worlds, with different laws applied to humans than to other species. High Counselor Ziv waved his hand dismissively. Ambassador, we have heard these complaints before. If humans cannot adapt to galactic standards, perhaps you are not ready for full membership. The council moves at its own pace, not yours. Jiho smiled for the first time that day, but the expression held no warmth. I am not here to complain, Counselor. I am here to inform you that as of this moment, humanity formally withdraws from the Galactic Council, and all associated treaties effective immediately. The chamber erupted into chaos, delegates shouting questions, threats, and demands. Songmi smiled slightly as she watched their reactions, exactly as predicted. Counselor Trex of the Viridian Confederacy laughed loudly, his voice cutting through the noise. And where will you go? His mandibles clicked rapidly. Your kind needs our trade. Fruits our technology. Your colonies would starve without council supply lines. Jiho remained calm as he responded. We need nothing from you. We have developed our own technologies, established our own alliances with species outside your precious council. The economic and defensive agreement with the Rathi Collective was finalized yesterday. At the mention of the Rathi, several council members stood up in alarm. The Rathi were powerful beings who had refused council membership centuries ago, preferring isolation to the politics of the galactic community. They possessed technology. Even the oldest council races did not understand an alliance between humans, and Rathi changed everything. Impossible, shouted a Morcanti delegate. The Rathi speak to know. Jiho touched his datapad again and a new image appeared, showing human representatives shaking hands with the crystalline Rathi leaders. The date stamp showed it happened just 1 day ago. Humans are adaptable, said Jiho while you dismissed us. As primitive, the Rothi recognized our potential. They value what you have ignored, our creativity, our determination, our willingness to try new approaches. Songmi walked forward, now carrying another datapad, which she placed on a council scanner. This contains the formal documentation of our withdrawal and the coordinates where you can send your final communications. All human settlements in council space will be evacuated within 30 days. All trade agreements will end when our people leave high. Councillor Ziv stood, his silver skin reflecting the chamber lights. Think carefully. Ambassador, this decision cannot be undone. Once you leave the protection of the council, you face the dangers of the galaxy alone. Piracy, slave traders, resource shortages. We have faced dangers before. Jiho replied, we survived our own violent history, reached the stars without alien guidance, terraformed planets your scientists declared impossible, all while being told we were too primitive to succeed. We do not fear being alone, Counselor, we fear remaining where we are not valued. As Jiho and Songmi turned to leave, Counselor Ethla, of the Morcanti Dominion, called out, you will come crawling back when the pirates start targeting your ships, when you need medicines for your plagues. Jiho paused at the doorway and looked back at the council, his eyes moving from one alien representative to another, taking one last mental image of the chamber. For 20 years, humanity had tried to earn a place here only to be treated as lesser beings, but no more. For an alliance that prides itself on being forward-thinking, you have become remarkably short-sighted. He said quietly, humanity does not need the council. I wonder how long before you realize the council needed humanity. With those words, Jiho and Songmi walked out of the chamber, the doors sliding shut behind them in the corridor. Songmi checked her datapad. Communications are already flooding in from 7 species requesting private meetings. Let them wait. Jiho said, the time for negotiations was yesterday. Today we prepare our people for departure. As they walked toward the human embassy, workers ran past them, some crying, others looking determined. News was spreading fast that humanity was leaving the council. Diplomats who had ignored humans for years suddenly wanted urgent meetings. Guards who had always treated humans with contempt now stood at attention as they passed. A message appeared on Jiho's datapad from Earth Command. It contained only 2 words. Operation Exodus confirmed. The galaxy was about to learn what happens when you push humans too far. 1 year after humanity departed council space, the nightmare they had warned about finally arrived. The first wave of the Void Swarm struck without warning. The Pellax system fell within days, its defenses woefully inadequate against an enemy they had been warned about but never prepared for. The Void Swarm was unlike anything the Council had faced before, not a species seeking territory or resources, but a cosmic horror that consumed everything in its path. The entities appeared as dark, shifting masses that absorbed light, energy, and matter. They moved through shields as if they didn't exist, and conventional weapons had little effect against their constantly changing forms. Min Ho Kang, commander of the human border fleet, received the distress calls with a grim expression as he stood on the bridge of the HES Defender, the most advanced warship humans had ever built. Its true capabilities had been hidden from the Council for years. Play it again, Minho ordered his officers, watching the main screen intently. The panicked voice of a Council official filled the command center. This is Outer Council member Threx. The Void has consumed Pellax and moves toward Centuri space. We cannot stop them. Our weapons have no effect. We request immediate assistance from any human forces monitoring this channel. Captain Sumi Bay, his second-in-command, crossed her arms as the message ended. They ignored 3 separate warnings about the swarm. They called our preparation wasteful militarism. Now they want our help. The message had been broadcast on all frequencies, a desperate plea that revealed how unprepared the Council remained despite human warnings about the Void Swarm approaching from the galactic east. Humans had been monitoring the swarm for years, developing special weapons and defenses while the Council dismissed their concerns. Minho sighed heavily. Prepare the fleet. We will reinforce the Dauntless line. Sir Suma's surprise was evident. We're helping them after everything they did. To us, we're containing the threat, Minho corrected. If the swarm overruns Council space, it will eventually threaten human territories too. Besides, he added with a faint smile. This provides an excellent opportunity to demonstrate exactly what they've been missing. Throughout human space, military vessels prepared for battle. They had been built in secret while humans were still part of the Council. Their true capabilities hidden from alien observers, these ships contained technologies no Council species had ever seen: quantum disruptors, shield harmonizers, and tactical jump drives that allowed instant repositioning during combat. President Ji-ho Kim, now leader of the human government beyond Council space, called an emergency meeting. The Void Swarm has advanced faster than our models predicted. He informed his advisors the Council forces are collapsing without coordination. The holographic display showed the swarm moving through Council systems, consuming everything in its path. Ships, planets, even stars darkened as the Void passed. Aliens fled in panic, abandoning outer worlds and retreating toward the Council core systems. We predicted this, Song-mi Park said quietly, standing beside Ji-ho. They thought themselves invincible even after we left. Even after their systems began failing, they never truly prepared. Do we have unanimous approval for intervention? Ji-ho asked, looking around the table at human leaders gathered from across their new territory. All heads nodded in agreement. Despite everything the Council had done, humans would not stand by and watch billions die if they could prevent it. The human fleet arrived at the Centauri border, just as the Void Swarm prepared to assault its defenses. The Council ships, already damaged and low on ammunition, watched in awe as human vessels deployed technologies they'd kept hidden for decades. From the command ship HES Defender, Minho opened a channel to the remaining Council forces. This is Commander Kang of the Human Expeditionary Force. Form up behind us and follow our lead. We will create an evacuation corridor for your civilian transports. You came back, stuttered the Council commander. We never left the galaxy, Minho replied calmly. We just stopped letting you dictate our place in it. The battle that followed would be remembered for centuries. Human ships moved with precision and coordination. That the Council fleet had never achieved. Quantum disruptors tore through swarm. Biosignatures, shield harmonizers, protected Allied vessels from the Void's corrosive touch. Tactical jumps allowed human ships to appear inside swarm formations, shattering their coordination. On the Council homeworld, High Counselor Ziv watched tactical displays with growing amazement as human forces accomplished in hours what Council fleets had failed to achieve in weeks, pushing back the Void and creating safe corridors for evacuation. How Counselor Ziv whispered, "How did they develop such technology without our knowledge?" Yoon Ha-yoon, standing nearby as the human representative, smiled slightly. "We had many years to prepare," she said, while being told our concerns were paranoia. Our military research wasteful. Our warnings ignored. Humans do not stop preparing just because others refuse to. Listen, as the battle raged, news spread throughout Council space. Humans, the supposedly primitive newcomers they'd driven away, were now the only thing standing between civilization and annihilation. The species who had been denied equal status and basic respect were risking their lives to save those who had belittled them. Aboard the HES Defender, Captain Sumi moved between command stations overseeing the complex battle. Their advanced sensors could track the swarm movements, predicting their attacks before they formed. Human scientists had spent years studying the Void, learning its patterns and weaknesses. Commander Kang, the Council flagship, is requesting direct communication. Sumi reported, traces of anger still evident in her voice. They wish to speak with you privately. Minho nodded. Put them through. The face of High Counselor Ziv appeared on the screen. His silver skin dull with exhaustion and stress. We are sending all available forces to support your battle line, he said, his usual arrogance replaced by genuine respect. The Council formally requests a military alliance against this threat. Minho kept his expression neutral, despite the satisfaction he felt. The mighty Council reduced to requesting help from the humans they'd dismissed as unworthy. We will coordinate with your forces, Minho replied, but this is not an alliance yet. That decision belongs to our government. Our immediate priority is containing the swarm and evacuating civilian populations. Throughout the battle zone, human ships formed protective barriers around refugee vessels, guiding them to safety. While combat ships engaged, the Void Council military officers watched in amazement as human captains executed maneuvers they had never seen before. Using technologies that seemed impossible on a medical transport, Ji-won Kang worked frantically to save wounded aliens, using techniques and medicines developed in human space. After the Exodus Council doctors watched and learned as he demonstrated procedures they had never considered his knowledge, saving thousands who would have died under traditional council medical protocols. The human fleet is requesting permission to deploy solar resonators in the Centauri star, a council officer reported. To High Counselor Ziv, they claim it will disrupt the swarm communication. The counselor hesitated. Such technology was far beyond council. Understanding, manipulating stellar matter was considered impossible, yet humans had apparently mastered it. Grant them whatever they need. Ziv ordered. We have no choice but to trust them. As the battle entered its third day, human vessels positioned devices around the Centauri star. When activated, they created ripples in the star's corona, sending precise energy patterns through the system. These waves disrupted the void swarm, causing the entities to lose cohesion and retreat their coordinated attack, falling into chaos aboard the Defender. Minho watched with satisfaction as the swarm withdrew. Our scientists were correct. The stellar resonance breaks their hive mind. He told his officers prepare for final containment protocols. The human fleet pressed their advantage, driving the confused swarm entities back toward uninhabited space where special beacon ships waited to create a quarantine field that would trap the void entities and prevent their return. In council emergency chambers, Yuna Yoon delivered the news. The immediate threat has been contained, she announced. But this was only the first wave. Our sensors detect more swarm clusters approaching from the galactic east. The war has just begun. Without human intervention, there would be no council left. Ziv acknowledged, his voice solemn. We recognize this. The admission hung in the air, weighty, with implications. After centuries of arrogance, the council had been humbled first by humanity's absence, then by humanity's rescue. President Jiho Kim has authorized me to deliver this proposal. Yuna continued, presenting a data crystal. It contains a new framework for cooperation between humans and the council to address the void threat. As council members reached for the crystal, eager to secure human protection, Yuna added, but understand this, humans will never again accept less than full equality. We come as partners or not at all. The choice now faced by the council was clear: accept humans as true equals or face the void alone. 3 years after humanity departed, the Galactic Council chamber looked very different. The ornate podiums and hierarchical seating had been replaced by a circular arrangement where all representatives sat at the same level. Alien counselors who once looked down on humans now faced them as equals. This change, like many others, had been a condition of human assistance against the void. Swarm, the war against the void, had raged for 2 years, devastating hundreds of systems before the combined forces of humanity. The Council and the Rathi Collective finally developed a permanent solution. Victory had come at great cost, but cooperation had achieved what arrogance never could. The galaxy had been saved by the very species the Council had dismissed as primitive. Heejin Bei, the human ambassador to the Reformed Council, stood to deliver her report. The final void swarm remnants have been contained, she announced. Joint Human Council task forces are establishing early warning systems in the affected sectors. Our scientists predict no further incursions for at least 500 years. High Counselor Ziv, one of the few council members to survive the war, nodded respectfully. Without human intervention, there would be no council left to warn. We recognize this. The acknowledgement hung in the air, weighty with implications. After centuries of arrogance, the council had been humbled first by humanity's absence, then by humanity's rescue. Representatives from over 300 species watched Heejin with newfound respect, understanding at last what the old council had failed to see. Humans were not lesser beings, but equals with unique strengths. Our diplomatic team has reviewed your proposed galactic charter. Heejin, continued President Jiho Kim, believes it represents a significant improvement over the previous arrangement. The new charter established equality among species regardless of technological development, prohibited the hoarding of vital technologies that could benefit all, and created mutual defense obligations with shared responsibility. It was a dramatic departure from the old system that had privileged ancient species and kept newer ones subordinate. Will humanity rejoin the council under these terms? Asked a representative from a species that had only gained a seat after the reforms. Heejin smiled diplomatically. Humanity will not rejoin, as that implies returning to a former arrangement. Instead, we propose a new alliance. one of genuine partners rather, than patrons and clients. Her words carried special weight after what the galaxy had witnessed. Humans had proven themselves not only technological equals, but in many ways superior to the oldest council races. Yet they sought partnership rather than dominance, refusing to repeat the mistakes of those who had belittled them. After the session, Heejin met with Admiral Doyen Choi, now a senior commander in the human fleet, in the observation lounge overlooking the rebuilt council headquarters. Together, they watched representatives from dozens of species conversing as equals, many of them from worlds that would have been consumed by the void without human intervention. "They have changed," Doyen remarked, watching the aliens interact without the old hierarchies and formalities that once dominated council proceedings. "Fear changes everyone," Eugene replied. "Fear of loss, fear of extinction, not just fear." Doyen countered, understanding. They needed to see their own limitations and our potential to respect us properly. The Void Swarm merely accelerated a lesson they were already learning from our departure. Heijin nodded toward a memorial wall honoring those lost in the Void War, both human and alien names inscribed together. "A harsh lesson," she said. "A necessary one," Doyen replied quietly. Humanity had to depart for the council to understand what they were throwing away. Sometimes the only way forward is to walk away and let others face the consequences of their actions. In the new council archives, a special exhibition had been established documenting the human exodus and return. It showed the systems that had failed after humans left, the desperate messages sent by council worlds, the arrival of the void, and finally the human fleet returning to save those who had spurned them. Younger aliens studied this history with fascination, while older ones watched with the wisdom of those who had lived through devastating change on Earth. Now the center of a thriving human territory, Jiho Kim prepared to step down as president after guiding humanity through its most challenging period. He stood in his office overlooking a city that had grown more beautiful and prosperous since leaving council restrictions behind. Songmi Park entered carrying the final treaty documents. The new galactic alliance has been ratified by all former council worlds and our colonies. She reported 327 species have signed, including the Rathi Collective. Jiho smiled. The Rathi had refused council membership for millennia, considering the old organization too hierarchical and stagnant. That they would join this new alliance showed how fundamentally things had changed. "Do you regret any of it?" Songmi asked quietly. "The risks we took, the lives lost in the war." Jiho considered the question carefully, watching distant ships rise through the atmosphere, carrying humans and aliens working together on equal terms. "Regret, no," he finally answered. "We tried for 20 years to change the council from within, to make them see us as equals. Only by leaving could we make them understand sometimes respect must be earned through absence." Throughout human and council space, joint research facilities had been established where scientists of all species worked together, sharing knowledge, developing new technologies that benefited everyone. The restrictions and secrecy of the old council replaced by cooperation. Children of species that once regarded each other with contempt now learned together, played together, and imagined a future where old prejudices seemed incomprehensible. In the former council core worlds, Jiwon Kang now directed the largest medical research center in the galaxy, where doctors from hundreds of species studied human medical techniques alongside alien healing arts, creating treatments that saved countless lives regardless of species. The concept of human inferiority, once taken for granted throughout council space, now seemed absurd to younger generations, who had grown up seeing humans lead the fight against the void, develop technologies that saved billions, and then offer partnership rather than domination when victory was achieved. On the observation deck of the new Galactic Alliance headquarters, Heejin and Doyen finished their conversation watching the stars shine on a galaxy fundamentally transformed. In the end, humanity didn't need to prove their superiority, Heejin said quietly. "We simply needed to demonstrate our worth by its absence," Doyen finished, "and our magnanimity by returning when needed." Most outside the stars shone on a galaxy fundamentally transformed, not through conquest or domination, but through humanity's simple refusal to accept less than they deserved, and their choice to help anyway when the moment demanded it. When the human fleet had first departed council space, Jiho Kim had said, "We leave nothing behind but what they took for granted." Now 3 years later, his words had become famous throughout the galaxy. A reminder that value is often recognized only in absence, that respect must be earned, not demanded, that sometimes the greatest power lies in the willingness to walk away. The lesson had been learned at tremendous cost, but it would not be forgotten. As long as the Galactic Alliance endured, the new understanding between humans and aliens would guide thousands of species toward a future brighter than any the old Council could have imagined. And somewhere in the vast reaches of uncharted space, the ancient Rathi observed with satisfaction as the younger races finally learned what they had known for millennia. True strength lies not in domination, but in cooperation, not in hierarchy, but in recognizing the unique value each brings to the whole. The galaxy had nearly lost everything before understanding this simple truth. Humanity had departed, and in doing so changed everything. 1 week after Ji-Ho Kim walked out of the council chamber, the greatest migration in galactic history began. Massive colony ships appeared in orbit around every planet where humans had settled, their engines glowing blue against the darkness of space. These ships had been built in secret over the past 5 years, part of a plan humans had hoped they would never need to use. Doyon Choi stood on the bridge of the HES Pathfinder, the largest human vessel ever constructed, at nearly 7 kilometers long. It could carry 200,000 people, their belongings, and even disassembled buildings through his viewport. He watched as smaller ships ferried humans up from the surface of Neova 3, a planet that had once been barren rock before human terraforming made it into a garden world. 20 years of work? Ha-Jin Lee said quietly as she joined him at the viewport. She had been governor of the Neova colony before the withdrawal order. Nearly 50,000 humans had transformed the planet into one of the most productive agricultural worlds in the sector, and now they were leaving all of it behind. The Morcanti representatives arrived an hour ago, Ha-Jin continued. They are offering new terms. Triple the voting power for humans, guaranteed, seats on the Technology Council, and exclusive mining rights in the Vorta Belt. Doyon turned away from the viewport to look at the datapad she offered. Are they offering respect? He asked. Ha-Jin shook her head. They still think this is a negotiation tactic. They believe we cannot survive without them. Outside the massive viewports, hundreds of transport ships moved in perfect formation. The exodus had been planned with military precision. Each family knew exactly which ship to board, what they could bring, and where they would be relocated. Humans had always been good at moving quickly when needed. Their history on Earth had taught them to be ready. On the planet below, council representatives watched in growing concern as factories closed, shops emptied, and farms were harvested for the last time. Human workers who had kept vital systems running simply walked away, leaving instruction manuals behind, but no one to operate the complex machinery they had built. Captain, we have an emergency. Transmission from the council world. Ilara said, a communications officer, his voice urgent. Put it through, Doyon replied. A panicked alien face appeared on the main screen, scales gleaming under emergency lights. We have lost atmospheric control in the main colony, they gasped. Our engineers cannot restart the terraforming systems humans built. Please, we need your technicians back. All 50,000 colonists will die if the air processors fail. Doyon glanced at Ha-Jin, who nodded slightly. Send them the technical manuals again. Doyon ordered, and mark the critical startup sequence in red. Their engineers should be able to handle it. But sir, the officer began, then stopped as Doyon raised his hand. For 20 years, we tried to teach them, maintained their systems while they claimed superiority. Doyon said quietly, they must learn to stand without us now. This is what they wanted. Throughout council space, similar scenes played out on dozens of worlds. Communication networks failed as human technicians departed. Advanced medical equipment stopped working without the specialists who maintained them. Trade routes became dangerous as human security ships were recalled. In the Pathfinder's main cargo bay, Taeyong Kwon supervised as the last art pieces from the human embassy were carefully packed. Humans were leaving nothing behind that mattered to them, taking their culture, their knowledge, and their innovations with them. Did you include the files the council requested? Taeyong asked a young technician who was loading data crystals into a secure container. The technician nodded. Only what they already had access to. She replied, nothing new. Nothing they haven't earned. On the bridge, Ha-Jin received another message on her datapad. We have confirmation that 90% of humans in council space will depart. Some have chosen to stay due to family connections or personal choice, she reported to Doyun. Everyone else will be gone within 30 days as promised. What about the warning? Doyun asked, quietly, his face showing concern for the first time. Hajin sighed. We sent the full data package on the void swarm approaching from the galactic east 3 times. We presented evidence of their advance, and 3 times the council dismissed it as human paranoia. They refused to prepare. Let them face the consequences of their arrogance, then Doyun said, but his voice held no satisfaction. Only resignation. Humans had tried to warn the council about the deadly threat moving toward populated space, but had been ignored like so many times before. As the final transports docked with the colony ships, Songmi Park joined Doyun and Hajin on the bridge. She had just arrived from the council homeworld, where she'd delivered humanity's final message. The council has officially removed Earth from all star maps, she reported. Their new official position is that humans were never important to galactic development, and our departure is insignificant. Doyun laughed without humor. They are already rewriting history. Songmi handed him a small data crystal. I received this unofficially from the Talarian representative. They at least understand what is happening. Doyun inserted the crystal into a reader. A star map appeared showing a massive fleet of unknown vessels moving steadily toward council space. The void swarm was coming sooner than expected. Should we warn them again? Hajin asked. They would not listen. Doyun replied. They never have sent the data to our new Rathi allies. They at least will prepare properly. Outside the viewport, the last transport docked its passengers, flooding into the Pathfinder, tired but determined. Soon, nearly 1,000 colony ships would jump to their new home far from council space. Human engineers had spent years preparing planets for settlement, while the council believed they were simply mining resources. Pathfinder to all vessels, Doyun announced, his voice carried to every human ship across the sector. Jump coordinates locked. Prepare for synchronized departures. The human fleet prepared to leave. Emergency communications flooded in from dozens of council worlds, suddenly aware of how dependent they had become on human innovation and labor trade negotiations. Requests for technical assistance, offers of revised treaty terms, all too late. On the council homeworld, High Counselor Ziv stared in disbelief at reports coming in from across council space. Critical systems, failing security alerts from unprotected borders, economic forecasts showing devastating losses in the coming months. They cannot simply leave. He insisted the galaxy doesn't work that way, but humans had never played by the rules. Others set for them. They found their own path, created their own solutions, and now they would make their own future. His private quarters, Jiho Kim watched through a viewport as the massive fleet prepared to jump. We leave nothing behind but what they took for granted, he said quietly. Knowing these words would go down in human history. 20 years of second-class citizenship ended today. A brilliant flash of light filled space as hundreds of human vessels activated their drives simultaneously and vanished into the darkness, leaving only silence and growing panic in their wake. The exodus was complete. Humanity had departed. On the Pathfinder bridge, Doyun turned to his crew. We have much work ahead, he said. Our new worlds await us, and we must build without the constraints the Council placed upon us for too long. Behind them, Council space faced its first night, without human ingenuity to solve its problems, without human soldiers to guard its borders, without human doctors to heal its sick. The consequences of underestimating humanity were only beginning to unfold. The real question, Hajin said, as the stars streaked by outside, will they come begging before the void arrives or after? Either way, Doyun replied, the galaxy will never see humans the same way again. 6 months after the human exodus, the consequences were becoming impossible to ignore. Throughout Council space, Jiwan Kang walked through the corridors of Elgara Station, one of the largest research centers in the galaxy, as one of the few humans who chose to remain in Council territory. His status had changed dramatically. Before the exodus, Jiwan had been treated as a second-class scientist, given menial tasks, and overlooked for promotions, despite his brilliant work in atmospheric science. Now he could barely walk 10 steps without being stopped by desperate researchers seeking his help. Director Vrel hurried toward him, facial tentacles twitching with stress. which showed how serious the situation had become. The Morcanti scientist had once claimed that humans were too primitive to understand true science. Now he depended on Jiwan for solutions to problems he couldn't solve. The atmospheric regulators on Vorish Prime have failed completely, Director Vrel said without greeting. We have evacuated most colonists, but 16,000 remain trapped in the southern habitats. We cannot restart the systems. Jiwan nodded calmly, unsurprised by this development. The regulators had been designed by human engineers who had tried for years to teach council technicians how they worked, but the aliens had shown little interest, assuming the technology would simply continue working without maintenance or understanding. I will need access to all technical files and a direct communication link to the control center, Jiwan said. Of course, Director Vrel agreed immediately. Whatever you need. The Science Council has authorized unlimited resources. How different from 6 months ago, Jiwan thought, when he had begged for basic equipment and been denied. Now they offered unlimited resources when it was nearly too late. In the main laboratory, Jiwan reviewed the technical data. While aliens watched nervously around him for 20 years, humans had built, operated, and maintained vital systems across council space but had never been given credit for their work. The council had taken human ingenuity for granted, assuming it would always be available. I don't understand, Director Vrel said, watching as Jiwan worked. The regulators functioned perfectly for decades before suddenly failing. Human technology seemed so reliable. Jiwan bit back a smile. They were reliable because human technicians serviced them quarterly. He explained, no one bothered to learn how the systems actually functioned. We tried to teach your engineers, but they weren't interested. Throughout council space, similar scenes played out. Vital systems failed, trade routes became dangerous as pirates returned in force. Medical facilities struggled without human doctors. Food supplies dwindled as human agricultural techniques were poorly implemented by alien farmers. The council was learning harsh lessons about interdependence. On the council homeworld, Yun adjusted her formal robes as she prepared to enter the emergency session. Once a minor diplomatic aide, she now represented human interests with surprising authority. The council, which had once dismissed humans as unimportant, now desperately sought her input. The Grand Council chamber looked different than it had 6 months ago. Gone were the ornate decorations and ceremonial items as resources grew scarce. Luxury had been the first sacrifice. Many council members appeared tired, their usual confidence replaced by worry and fear. The council will reconvene after recess, announced High Councillor Ziv, looking distinctly unhappy. Our agenda will address the growing shortage of medical supplies, particularly the absence of Proxima antibiotics. Proxima antibiotics had been developed by human scientists to combat a deadly plague 20 years earlier. The medicine had saved billions of alien lives, but now the production facilities stood empty. The human scientists who created the medicine, gone along with the knowledge of how to produce it effectively. Yunha made notes on her datapad as council members argued among themselves. The unity that had defined the council for centuries was fracturing as resources became scarce, and blame was assigned. Each species now fought for its own interests. The cooperative spirit dying without human diplomats to mediate disputes. In the hallway during recess, Yuna overheard Viridian representatives arguing in harsh whispers. How were we supposed to know humans held so many patents? One hissed their technology seemed so simple, or that their inferior ships were what kept the Krell pirates from attacking our fuel transports. Another added 3 major trade routes have become unusable without human patrols. They were building dependencies deliberately, a third said. Accusingly, this was their plan all along. Yunha smiled politely as she passed. They still didn't understand. Humans hadn't built dependencies, they had simply contributed their strengths to the galactic community. Only now in absence was their value becoming clear. That evening in her private quarters, Yunha composed an encrypted message to Jiho Kim, now established in the new human territory beyond council space. They are beginning to realize, but still blame us rather than themselves. Phase 1. Proceeding exactly as you predicted. The message would take weeks to reach human space as communication networks deteriorated without human maintenance. But Yunha knew Jiho would understand what was happening. The council was experiencing the first stage of lost denial. They still believed this situation was temporary, that humans would return when they realized how difficult independence would be. How wrong they were. Yuna thought as she looked out her window at the council city, once magnificent, now showing signs of neglect. Humans had never needed the council as much as the council had needed humans, on distant Vorish Prime. Jiwan Kang finally restarted the atmospheric regulators, saving thousands of lives. The aliens watched in amazement as he implemented simple solutions they had overlooked. I have documented the entire procedure, Jiwan explained to Director Vrel. Your engineers should be able to handle future problems if they follow these instructions precisely. The director nodded, gratefully clutching the data pad with the precious information. His species had once claimed technological superiority over humans, but now eagerly accepted human knowledge as salvation. Will your people return? Director Vrel asked hopefully. The council has authorized me to offer you personally 10 times your previous salary and a seat on the Science Council. Jiwan shook his head. Humans have found freedom beyond council space. He replied, we are building new worlds without restrictions or prejudice. Why would we return to being second-class citizens? But we need you. The director admitted, his tentacles drooping in defeat. You should have thought of that before driving us away. Jiwan replied without anger, simply stating a fact. Across council, space reports of system failures increased daily, while in human territory, new colonies flourished free from council regulation. Human innovation accelerated, creating technologies the council had never imagined possible. The council sends another request for humans to return, Yunha reported to her small staff of human diplomats who had also chosen to remain. They are offering seats on every major council and voting rights equal to the founding species. Too little too late, her assistant remarked. Human scouts have discovered resources beyond council space that make our previous holdings look insignificant, and the Rathi alliance grows stronger every day. Another added, the council fears what humans and Rathi might accomplish together. Yunhei nodded, viewing reports from human space where new cities rose on distant planets untouched by council influence, free from the restrictions that had held humanity back for 20 years, while the council struggled to maintain what they had. Humans were building something new, something better. The first stage's ending, she thought soon would come anger, then bargaining as the council realized what they had lost. The pattern was predictable, but would understanding come before it was too late? In the depths of space beyond council sensors, the Void Swarm continued its approach, its vast consciousness hungry for new worlds to consume. The threat humans had warned about drew closer every day, while the council remained unprepared, focused on immediate problems rather than the greater danger approaching. Phase 2 will begin soon, Yuna wrote in her personal log. The council will learn that they need us, but will humans choose to help when the darkness comes?